Welcome everybody to day 2 of Bitcoin MENA, the biggest Bitcoin conference in the Middle East. Today we are going to hear from none other than Simon Garovich, the head of Metaplanet, CZ Chengpeng Bao from Binance, as well as the one and only Michael Saylor. He'll be headlining the day. But first, we have an all-star panel here. I'm Frank Corva, Bitcoin journalist, joined to my left by Shawn Owen, founder and CEO of Salt Lending, as well as Stafford, Masie, chairman. I get this wrong each time. Executive chairman of the Africa Bitcoin Corporation. Gentlemen, super excited to be kicking off the day with both of you. I want to start by talking a little bit about one of the big themes from yesterday, especially. We had the Bitcoin for Corporations conference, this kind of intersection of Bitcoin and finance, traditional financial products. So, Stafford, we had you on the desk yesterday talking a little bit about what you're doing. Maybe you could recap that a little bit for the audience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So we approached, we're the first Bitcoin Treasury company listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. When we approached the Bitcoin strategy play, it was from what I always call a humanistic perspective. The business was 3 years old, listed on the JSE, and it was a private capital business. A business that provides funding to SMMEs in Africa. And not just SMMEs, we slanted more towards black female SMMEs. So a great impact story. When I became chairman, I looked at this and I orange-pilled most of the board and the CEO, and I said, hey, what if we took Bitcoin and we plugged this thermonuclear weapon, into the core of a private credit engine? Could we scale out this impact story more so than we previously ever imagined was possible? And we did it. So what we've established is we've changed our name. So we went from Outface Capital to the Africa Bitcoin Corporation. Okay. And we were very intentional about putting Bitcoin in our name. Most of the Bitcoin treasury companies, you won't find that they put Bitcoin in their name.
It's a little play on it, but not exactly, right?
Yeah, and we wanted to make sure that this is Bitcoin. We're not a DAT. We're not some altcoin.
I like that.
Bitcoin. That was the first thing. And we wanted to make a statement with that, being the first to do that. So we did that. And now we're raising Bitcoin to go off and find fiat capital, bring fiat capital to its knees. So go to Switzerland, go to Japan, lend at 4 to 6%, go to the East Coast, 9 to 10% of the USA, and deploy that capital in Africa through our private credit engine at 20 to 25%, which is actually cheap in Africa.
Yep,
lending rates are so high. So our analysts, our team in the private credit engine that we have are really loving this because the capital inflow, and we've already raised, I think we've announced a couple of days ago, 50 million rand, and we've got another 100 million rand in the pipeline. We don't have a lot of Bitcoin yet. We're still engaging with investors that buy our story, but the model, the story, the playbook, fixed income loves it. And we're already getting fiat capital coming in at very low rates, which we can deploy. And then again, we're going to take the profits from that and in kind of an accretive, in a budget neutral way, federate that back up into the treasury. And we're very excited about doing things like BitBonds. We will give a loan out to an SMME, say 5 million rand. We'll take 20%. So we'll take 1 million rand and we'll put that into Bitcoin. And if you do that as an SMME, we lower the rate of your lend, right?
Yeah.
And we hold on to that Bitcoin. And over the period of time, if that grows beyond what you owe, we can settle. Or at the end, we split that 50-50. Offering Bitcoin life insurance, offering Bitcoin insurance. So we're very excited about this highly, novel flywheel that we've built between traditional finance and Bitcoin powering it. So what Michael Saylor is doing with, digital capital and digital credit, we're doing with digital capital and private credit. And what we measure is not BTC per share only, BTC yield, MNAV, doing all those measurements. On our dashboard, on our analytics engine, you'll see very clearly we measure human yield.
And can you touch on this a little bit? So you actually have a metric where you're saying every 1 Bitcoin you accumulate is what you think will benefit potentially 5 employees?
Yeah, 5 employees. So that's back of the matchbook math at the moment.
Yeah.
The model's got to mature up, but where we're sitting right now is every Bitcoin that we raise impacts or creates and establishes 5 jobs.
5 jobs,
That impacts 5 families. That impacts 5 Africans. That's dignity. That's honor. That's purpose. And that's what we're driven by. Because both Warren and myself, the CEO and myself, we grew up in African townships. We've seen what broken money does to people. I was in Zimbabwe a couple weeks ago, met with very senior leaders talking about Bitcoin, and we're looking at a dual listing in Zimbabwe. And when you talk to them and you look in the Zimbabwean's eyes, you can see what broken money can do to someone's soul.
Yeah, for sure.
Like we frame their banknotes and we put it in our offices as a reflection of what broken money does. But just think about how that makes a Zimbabwean feel. That's not great, right?
A lot of it, yeah. No, and that Zimbabwe, one of the big examples of hyperinflation in recent times. Absolutely wild stuff. I want to come back to that, but Shawn, I want to go over to you. A little bit of an overview of what you're doing with SALT, if you don't mind. I believe, thinking about Bitcoin, I guess, as pristine collateral, right? People borrowing against it. This seems to be a new trend. SALT has been ahead of the curve on this trend. If you could fill us in a little bit more, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, really, it is that exact idea that Bitcoin needs to be property on a balance sheet, and however you want to hold it, it is something that preserves wealth. So we think of ourselves at SALT as helping people build and preserve wealth. And through the mechanism of Bitcoin, and the platform becomes a bridge where you still need fiat in order to do whatever is needed for the bridge from here to when we get there. But the ability to just enable people to be able to save, and to save at a better rate than they would be by having access to liquidity in a safe way, becomes something that really embodies, I think, why I got into Bitcoin, and having everybody have that ability to have a brighter future and to have hope into thinking about what it looks like once you're aware of what better money looks like. And it becomes a baseline. And we can do that for individuals and for corporations. And there's quite a bit of innovation we're working on around different ways to keep pioneering. And focusing on more ways we can give all of the things you would expect in the banking world, where you kind of have a lot of different needs. You got a Swiss Army knife. We want to build all of that around Bitcoin. Okay.
Just for the audience, I think a lot of people, they have their Bitcoin in cold storage. This is my Bitcoin. It stays over here. I don't do anything with it. I'm not giving it to someone else. I'm not borrowing nothing. How easy is it? How difficult is it to do something, to take a loan from something like SALT?
I mean, I think it's very easy. We focused a lot on making the least amount of friction possible to make that journey as easy as possible. And it's stressful, and we're aware of that. So we pride ourselves on having people and relationships and being able to get to know every account and focus on exactly what the needs are before just making any assumptions. And that's where we learn what kind of flexibility we can add in to give the best experience. But you can be in a very small position to start there. You could be just in custody and leave it that way to kind of get comfortable. Or you could be looking for yield, or you could be looking to borrow against it. And all of those are just parts of two sides of the same coin and different ways to move around it, but I think it's pretty easy.
Okay, appreciate that, Stafford. I want to go back to you. Yep. We were talking off camera a little bit about, we didn't all find ourselves here just kind of randomly, right? We care deeply about Bitcoin. A lot of us have this moment where we really saw the light when it comes to Bitcoin. So I'm kind of curious if you could share a little bit of your Bitcoin story. When did you see not only what Bitcoin is, but the impact it could potentially have on Africa?
Yeah, so it was 2014, and in 2014 I had built a fintech startup before fintech was fintech. And what we did was we converted a phone into a card acceptance machine. So we built a little dongle that plugged into the stereo jack. Before Jack Dorsey and Square.
Is that what I was going to ask? Yeah, before that, really?
Yeah, we were before. In fact, Visa did an investment in us after they did the investment in Jack. And we had discussions with them going back and forth around what they were doing. In the United States, they were doing it with a little white dongle that plugged into the phone, and they only had mag swipe. We did it differently in South Africa because we had EMV and PCI, so we had chip-based cards.
Okay.
So we had to actually build a dongle that could actuate the chipset, do a secure switch over a non-secure device into a banking fabric. We were the first in the world to do that. We filed multiple patents. The team was incredible. But the reason we built that company, let me just step back for a second,
Please.
And I think we'll go back to the Bitcoin in a second. I built that company because of an experience that I had. I was sitting 7 years before then, I was sitting in a very senior government official's office, and I was about to have a meeting with the senior government official. And I was there with someone from SAP, the ERP company. And a lady came in, black lady. She was in tears. The baby on her back that was wrapped in a blanket was in tears. I mean, she was distraught. It was a very traumatic scene. She came in. The senior government official opened the door, said, "Gents, I can't see you right now. I need to see her." She went in. Cut a long story short, I asked the receptionist, "What happened? Why is this lady in tears?" She said the following to me. This lady gave birth to twins. She was hurt during childbirth. She couldn't get out the house to make the payments. We sent out someone to her house to switch off her utilities. She lost one of her twins due to exposure. Yet, she had a bank account. She had cards in her wallet. She had cash in her wallet. She just couldn't physically get up to make the payment. That moved me, and I had to do something about that. And I got a bunch of engineers together at my house, and I was like, guys, we can solve this. And that's my message there is, in Africa, when payments don't work, in Abu Dhabi, if payments don't work in Europe, if payments don't work in the United States, it's an inconvenience.
Right.
Where we come from, when stuff like this don't work, people die.
Right.
People die every single day. And where I grew up, I see it every day. And people's lives are inconvenienced because payments and money are so broken. So I went and built that company, and that company was a very arcane solution for integration of bank fabric with mobile technology, etc. And then someone came along in 2014, one of my engineers, and showed me Bitcoin. And I was like, F off, man. There's no way. Are you telling me someone can send value from one person to the other person globally, securely, more so than we've ever done in the history of humanity?
Yes.
Without an intermediary?
Just a quick word. I just got a word from my producer. We do have to head over to a commercial break.
Sure.
But we're going to pick up right there when we come back. Back to the Bitcoin Magazine news desk powered by Crypto.com. We're here kicking things off at Bitcoin MENA 2025, day 2. To my left here, we have Shawn Owen, founder and CEO of Salt Lending, as well as Stafford Masie, executive chairman of the Africa Bitcoin Corporation. Stafford, I didn't mean to cut you off before.
No, sure.
You were in the middle of a story, your Bitcoin origin story. You started to see the value in Bitcoin, this ability to transact without a third party between two people. Please continue if you don't mind.
I didn't see the value. I mocked the value.
Okay.
I was like, there's no way. I had built this very arcane payment rails with issuers and acquiring and cards and key loading facilities and PCI and EMV, and I mean, banking fabric is extraordinarily arcane.
Okay.
Especially when you build a device that needs to switch a card transaction through it. Then you start realizing the depth, breadth, and width of it, how much energy it uses, how much technology is involved in it, and how arcane it really is. And then someone came along and said, hey, let me download this thing on your phone, and let me send you Bitcoin. And I was like, wait a minute, no, this doesn't make sense. So it took me a couple of months to kind of get it. I read the white paper, etc. And then I kind of went down shitcoin road for a while, right? So it's like Bitcoin, Ethereum was like fascinated me. And then I got into like, well, it's blockchain, it's not Bitcoin. And then all the way back again over kind of a 2-year period. So I'd say 2014 I bumped into it, mid-2015 towards the end of 2015, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is different. And then proof of work was my big one. This is where Bitcoin really made sense to me. It wasn't number go up, number go down, wallets and stuff. It was actually proof of work, the Bitcoin protocol, and every 10 minutes the block, I mean, all of that, and that's been extraordinary. And I've invested in a Bitcoin mining company in South Africa, and we're not announcing anything here right now, but we've got about 500 megawatts that we may announce.
Okay.
For grid stabilization, etc. And that part of Bitcoin to me is the more fascinating human impact side, actually.
100%.
It's the mining side.
Yeah, we could get into that. Shout out to Gridless, doing amazing work with Africa, with Bitcoin mining. I want to come back over to you, Shawn, if we could touch a little bit on your sort of origin story, maybe if the origin story to what brought you to doing what you're doing now with Salt.
Yeah. So, I came from, before hearing about Bitcoin, I was a workaholic, loved being entrepreneurial, was just very fascinated and focused on building wealth through working and saving and investing. And most of my investment had been in brick and mortar and ways that are very complicated, businesses that are complicated, with a lot of payments, a lot of transactions, and it was real estate focused. And 2008 really kind of rocked my world in a huge way, not only in the economics of just watching everything you worked for get cut in half on paper, but also just watching that clearly I did not, and a lot of other people did not know as much as we thought we knew about how things work, because it didn't seem possible to have that much carnage come out of it everywhere. When life was good and suddenly it wasn't for all of us. And, next thing you know, people are foreclosing and vacant houses, all this stuff. And so I went down this rabbit hole of learning and really found alternatives in what do I not know, and that led me to gold and silver and investing in hard assets. And it also led to a lot of rude awakenings with how did this happen with politics, and how did this happen in the money system, and how is this so broken, because I had grown up thinking everything just worked. And so I got lucky in a way, because all of that then kind of painted the picture to hear about Bitcoin. I love technology. I'd always do technology on the side, whether it was digital music, building computers, you name it, anything. I just always was very fascinated in the future, being better. And I thought technology was the way to get there, investing in technology. And so then suddenly you hear about Bitcoin, and I think the things that just really caught my attention immediately was you could mine it. There was this open, anybody can run it. You could earn it. In between, there's only two parties that are in a transaction. It settles immediately, and there's no censorship. I was just blown away, and started getting into the mining, and immediately started kind of getting down the rabbit hole of, is this real? And is this a scam? I was very busy still too, so it became the thing that just started to consume my mind.
It didn't go away, right?
It just wouldn't go away.
Yeah.
And it was like those eureka moments where your just brain is exploding with all this, what does this mean? And how cool would this be if this could be real? And what would this do for freedom and for finance and for libertarians and for the economics and for all those things that start to percolate? And I just could never get rid of that bug. And so I kind of started doing meetups and trying to find people. And most of the people were still pseudo-anonymous, or it was very few people that you couldn't meet people just out of the blue. And so I became an evangelist. I started doing the Bitcoin Jesus thing, where I would be pushing the narrative as much as I could, and started doing meetups, had the first meetups, and hosted those at businesses I was running. And 10 people would show up, and we would just geek out for hours and talk about it.
There was that many people? I was going to say 10 sounds like a lot.
This is in 2012-13.
Okay.
It starts to be just a small group of people that would have pizza and, hang out and talk. And, everybody was weird for their own reasons, but it was super interesting all the time. And everybody kind of had some notion of the same ideas, like it was reinforcing. And then you could watch the space, you could see things evolve. And I really wanted to do something there, and I thought it would be in payments, because at this time there was no scaling issues, there was no fork wars, there was free instant, you can download this immediately. And then I knew very well with transactions just how many steps there are in a transaction to close, and how much you don't really, as the business owner, get the benefit. You're getting taken advantage of.
Middle people taking
everywhere in between.
Yep.
And then it would take 90 days to settle, and I'd have to do the triple accounting, where invoice shows up, you put it in a computer, you put it on paper, you print it out. And I just thought, this is insane. Everything should go onto a blockchain. Bitcoin's just going to change the world, but it'll be through a currency. And I advocated for that until it started to become very clear that everybody would spend and immediately buy, and everybody would hold, and that was the thing, and nobody really wanted to let go of it. And then the IRS said you had to pay taxes and the scaling wars, and I thought, okay, well, you can buy and sell, but nobody wants to do that. You can spend, but we're probably a long ways away. What else is there? And I started messing around, talking to the banks, and my bank in particular, and said, I'd love to get a loan off of this. And this is after the idea kind of percolated, like these other ideas that are related to transactions and clearing are probably either too early or not feasible, or
Block might be changing that now. We got
probably
we might be on the verge of it sort of shifting into a different phase now.
I still think that's where it goes too. I do,
Yeah.
And I think we're like a scaling solution in a way, being able to borrow against, and another form of allowing people to have the time needed to stay in the position and still run their life. And so, like, when that started to percolate, and the ideas were, how cool would it be if you could just actually get people who would see that we're enthusiastic enough, and we're never letting this go to zero, because we'll all buy it. It's never going to zero.
Adam Back's got that famous, he's buying all the Bitcoin at 1 cent or something like that.
Right, and we were all like that. Everybody was like, dang it, Adam, I'm going to get right above you, you're not going to get all of it. I'm going to get some, you'll never get mine. And that just led to this idea of salt, which was really because a commodity, which Bitcoin was divisible, and universally all over the planet, and could be used as a currency. And salt historically was used to cure meat and preserve wealth, and was used for salaries and paying for trade.
So that's where the name comes from.
Yeah, for preserving wealth. Really, we like to think that we help people build and preserve wealth.
Yeah,
and it's just such a good analogy, because it's from salt of the earth, and it seemed to be something that was just good all around.
Yeah.
Everybody was enthusiastic. You had a brighter future outlook on everything.
Love that.
Those would be the best days ever, and just talking about what could be. And now we see everybody doing all those things.
Yeah,
and it's really amazing.
Has to feel good to see it come to life. Speaking of seeing things come to life, South Africa, I feel like, is about to become Bitcoin country part 2. We have Money Badger enabling people to spend their Bitcoin all over the country. You have things like Machankoro we were talking about, people being able to use Bitcoin, just a feature phone, like an old Nokia phone. Bitcoin Akazi, other circular economies within the country. A lot of really, really amazing stuff happens. So 2 questions, if you don't mind. One, if you could just give us a little bit of a further overview. And then 2, also, I know you said what you're doing, you're in the nascent stages of it. You're just getting it started. But I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more. Is there a thirst for it? Are you hearing that, are people saying, like, let's get it rolling, like we want in on this sort of thing? So if you could speak to both of those, that'd be great.
Let's start with the latter one. I like that. Yeah, we're very careful, though. So we're sitting across from investors that really want to come in, and we got hundreds of millions of dollars of capital potentially being allocated. But we want to make sure that the folks that we're looking at across the table buy into the human story. That's very, very important for us. So we've been real careful.
Yep.
Could we have done a couple of pipe deals already and smash bought Bitcoin? I think we could have done that.
Okay.
But we've held back.
Okay.
And we've just said, no, this is not the way to do it. And I just, I think the Bitcoiners have walked into Wall Street with the greatest intentions. We open, we honest, we transparent, the blockchain's open, and we've just climbed into this tank with sharks.
Yeah.
And like,
Wall Street and Bitcoin culture are not necessarily symbiotic.
And I think that's what you're seeing. All the guys being, they're getting $100 million in the front door, and at the back door there's $150 million worth of shorts happening up, and that arbitrage. So that's what's happening in Bitcoin land right now, and or Bitcoin Treasury land.
Yep.
So yes, I mean the interest is significant. We just want to make sure we got the right capital allocators, people that really buy into the story. So we've moved away from kind of hedge funds and that. We're looking at high net worth individuals, family offices that really buy the story. We've dual listed now. In the United States, we're on OTCQB, so the ticker is on there.
Okay.
Acus, we got approval. We're just holding back. We'll launch probably the first couple of weeks of Jan. We just don't think it's a good time to launch. We're live in Frankfurt, and we're going to dual list across all the African exchanges. So we're in Namibia already. We're going to go to Botswana, etc. So we're opening up international capital to gain access pan-African, and that's what also makes us different is the fact that we're not just South African. It's Africa.
Yeah.
And you can't do it anywhere else in Africa besides the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Just the liquidity levels on it, the governance, the maturity, the integration. Example, when we went to Acus in the UK, we were fast-tracked. When we went to OTCQB in the United States, we were fast-tracked simply because of the JSC's reputation and the governance levels that we have in the world. So that's moving along real nice, and we're going to do it carefully. We're not interested in having thousands of Bitcoin. We're interested in making sure we have enough Bitcoin where we can lend to augment the private credit business to have that human impact.
Okay.
We're going to do it carefully. We're going to do it slowly and with conviction.
Okay.
And that's our strategy. And like everyone else around us is like running towards, no, we're focusing on the human impact. That's big for us. The first part of the question was?
We were talking about just, personally,
adoption.
I'm watching what's happening in South Africa. It seems like
it's amazing.
What you're doing, you're right in the center of a tremendous sort of movement that's happening in South Africa right now. If you could speak a little bit more to it. Yeah.
So the Money Badger guys, I know Caro from Vic very well, and the team over there, they're doing incredible things. So essentially, they've just switched on merchants for Bitcoin acceptance across the country. I think we're sitting between 650,000 to 700,000 merchants that can accept Bitcoin in South Africa.
Wow.
So if you that's just what he's done. But if you take all the little guys together, I think we're close on 1 million. And in ratio to population, with Square, I think we were the biggest in the world in ratio to population.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Even volume of merchants accepting Bitcoin, I think we're the biggest in the world. Before Square made the announcement.
Well, no, probably. What's the population? 60 million in South Africa.
Million, yeah.
So then you have 1 million merchants. If we have 4 million potential merchants with Square, times about 300 million, it's comparable. But I would say you have more. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
So South Africa seems like it's behind.
So I would always say people are waiting for this thing to become a medium of exchange or a unit of account. I hear it when I come to these Bitcoin conferences, and I smile because back home, it's a medium of exchange. It's a unit of account. There are circular economies where they won't take your US dollars. They don't want your US dollars. Yeah. The surfer kid that's surfing, he doesn't want USD, he wants sats. Yeah. Because when he's doing sats, he's got a commodity, he's got an asset that goes up over time, which gives him the ability to focus on his surfing. So he doesn't have to go wash cars, he doesn't have to go clean gardens, etc. He can focus on his surfing, and he can actually afford the ticket that the Australian kid and the USA kid are paying on the surfing scene. And I think what we're going to see from Bitcoin Ikasi with the whole surfer initiative over there, I think the first black male professional surfer is going to emerge from there.
Love that.
And that's going to be because of Bitcoin.
Yep, love that. Absolutely beautiful. I want to get back to, come over back to you, Shawn. We've obviously seen things change a little bit in the United States, a lot of it maybe, with the new administration. Biden administration, quite antagonistic to Bitcoin. Trump, some people feel like he hasn't delivered enough yet, but obviously the general tone has changed. It's easier for businesses to operate in the United States. But one of the big things, it was something I actually personally asked in the White House, is when do we see something like a de minimis exemption to at least let people spend in smaller increments, $500, $600, because if they are using an app like Cash App actually, I believe, does track your transactions. You do have to pay taxes on it. It makes it a little bit harder. So we want that friction eliminated. Do you think we're moving in that direction? Do you think we'll see this under this administration?
I don't know if if we'll see it under this administration, but I would love to. And I think that we're seeing the right movement happen in general. I mean, it's very, you can't applaud it enough, because to go through choke point 1, 2, 3, and all the others where it's just feeling like, why am I even a citizen here? Because I feel like you're just trying to kill me, to it went for being an innovator, like, what did I do wrong? To now where it's actually back to, okay, not only are we going to do that, we're going to be the leaders, which is where I think we should be. I think that is the right mentality, whether no matter what country you're from, that you would just think that why not do something if you're just going to do it the best you can. And I do think that this is a problem with the transactions. And in a way, it's counter to what I would say if I was only prioritizing what we sell, because we sell a bridge to kind of cover that. A lot of people just don't want to deal with all the accounting because it's.
Do you think that is that the main thing?
There's
that
a lot of that.
Okay.
There's a lot of it goes along with time bias, right? Like you just want to hold for as long as possible because you can't spend it. If you could spend it and you didn't have to worry about all this microtransactions and tax accounting and tracking different wallets and all the crazy things that people
It's truly insane if you do.
It's truly insane.
Yeah.
It's truly insane what was being proposed and the way you'd have to deal with it, where it was intended to kill it, I think. And so I don't know if we'll see that, but I definitely would love to help advocate, and I think it's the right thing, especially under some threshold, right? Like it just doesn't make sense once it's under some threshold.
Yeah.
We'll see that eventually.
Yeah, we will see what happens. One of the things that I'm excited about, I speak with Herman from Bitcoin Akazi a lot, and I feel like there is some willingness of politicians, at least on the local level from what I'm hearing in South Africa, to look at something like Bitcoin Akazi, a circular economy, and say, okay, this is really solving a lot of problems. Yeah. Maybe we should really think about this. And a true open-mindedness at adopting Bitcoin last January. There were a few politicians there willing to listen, sitting down, listening. Some of them spoke as well. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah.
Do you feel like, and how high does that go? Does that go to the federal government? Are they paying attention? Do they want to see Bitcoin adopted?
Yeah, so in my individual capacity, I am an advisor to some of these stakeholders, right? So Reserve Bank Governor. We have a group called the Intergovernmental FinTech Working Group, IFWG. We've got South African Revenue Service, which is like the IRS. We've got our version of the SEC. All these folks are looking at this. And I think they're very forward-thinking. I mean, they allowed a company to have Bitcoin and its name on the JSE, and they allowed us to execute against the strategy. That took a lot of lobbying, engaging, educating, etc. The big challenge that we have, and I think this is probably a global challenge, is when it comes to legislation, rules around crypto, the big issue that we have is that our stakeholders haven't separated Bitcoin out from crypto. It's a massive issue. So that's kind of the last step that we need to take in South Africa, where I'm trying to educate all those relevant folks to say, listen, there's a digital commodity, there's an asset without an issuer. This is very different from crypto.
Yeah.
Crypto is unregulated securities. These things have head offices and developers and, chief marketing officers, CEOs, etc. But this thing over here is a digital commodity. You've got to treat it separately. So what we see happening, example, when we listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, there was a clause, it was like 18.3.1b, and the clause said you cannot issue a security on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange that's backed by any crypto or any reflection of crypto. So we were engaging them saying, hey, you need to take this clause away because we'd like to do this. But you keep it for crypto, but you take the Bitcoin
And
away.
they listened to this?
No, they didn't.
Okay.
What they did was they took the whole clause away.
Okay,
So now suddenly that's become possible. And someone wants to launch Ethereum. It's the pendulum went from like absolutely no to over here. To like now, that's a big challenge.
Different story.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The narrative, I think it is tough. Yeah, it's and it's interesting too, because I think in the United States, what we also need is we have market structure coming up. We want to see peer-to-peer rights, and it's weird because on a certain level, we do. I feel like we need to be nice enough to the crypto people because it might not be my thing or our thing, but I think people deserve this right to transact peer-to-peer. But then on some levels, you're sort of like, but we're still different, but we're still over here.
So we were a little bit more clinical.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you go into a circular economy, one thing about a circular economy, Herman says this, you can't shitcoin a circular economy.
There's no ETH beach.
There is no ETH beach. There's no Solana, anything. You go in the deepest, darkest jungle, none of the value propositions like speed and scale.
Right.
No, they want decentralization. They want immutability. They want sovereignty. They want the base level value proposition of Bitcoin over where we are. So
100%.
shitcoining doesn't work. And, so we're not as nice to them as you are.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, we did see something funny. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. When I think it was Trump, I forget when it was, earlier on, right when he had come into office, he said something about the crypto reserve they were going to create, and the internet exploded, and then very quickly it became a Bitcoin reserve, and then a digital asset stockpile. Very different rhetoric immediately. absolutely. Do you think that made it, right? Do you think we made a difference?
Oh,
everyone?
for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All the way from all the work that everybody did, the hard work that everybody did to really get the word out about what bad regulation was there in a lot of these bills that had to get dealt with, right? All the way up to, I think, advocating for better administration and really making it known that there are many, many, many good people here working hard, work to be in the American dream. And I think it made a big difference. And that was a really funny one because everybody was just like, what?
Yeah, this is not. But it was actually what was more telling was you had crypto exchange owners. You had the Winklevi come out and say, no, we're doing a Bitcoin reserve. So it actually was sort of like everyone put their cards on the table and said, this is actually what we think of what's going on. And it's fair if you're into crypto and that's your thing. But just at least acknowledge that it's different.
Right,
yeah, it's a different story. Maybe let's 2026. Where are we going? Is the 4-year cycle dead? Is Bitcoin going up forever from here? Is it what are you looking forward to?
I don't care.
Okay, I like it.
We don't care. We believe in it. We think we don't care for cycles. We in it. The addressable market for Bitcoin is so massive in Africa, and I think it's all over the world. I mean, our informal economy in South Africa is arguably 30 to 40 times the size of our informal economy is 30 to 40 times the size of the formal economy.
Could you define that if you don't mind? So how would you define I know what it is personally, but if you could for the audience.
It's the pure cash-based rural township economy.
Yep.
It employs 70% of the people in South Africa. It's not measured. We don't know how deep and wide it is, but we know it's significant. People say the unemployment levels in South Africa are 47%, up to 60%. But if that was the case, we'd have anarchy, but we don't. So who's employing these people? Where are they going? It's in the rural township. Those economies, someone on our board called Gigi Altcock, he wrote a book called Carsonomics, which goes into trying to kind of frame this informal economy. I mean, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
A lady came to us for a private credit loan. Okay, black lady, sat down across the table. This lady is turning over, about $5 million, but it's pure cash. She builds houses to put her cash into. Let me say that again. She does not put her money in a bank. She builds a house and she puts money physically in the house.
A hardware wallet is really going to be a revelation.
So when you go to, you see what I mean? So that's how big that is.
Wow.
And that is when we have human ATMs, we have human banks. You can knock on her door and you can lend money. You can buy shampoo. You can get a headache tablet. You can get alcohol from her. She's everything in the community. She's protected by the community. That's very sophisticated. So when we say informal, we need to be real careful. Doesn't mean not sophisticated. Yeah. And what Bitcoin's doing is unlocking that. So we, from a private credit perspective, we're going into that SMME base and we're finding these businesses that are over-securitized. I mean, here's the keys to my house. There's a couple million. Now give me the loan so I can go buy the tractor. Or I can go buy the car. Or I can buy the land. Or I can take out this bond, etc. That's what we see happening. And that's all over Africa. And that's a massive unlock for Bitcoin.
Amazing stuff. I apologize. We have to cut to commercial break for a second, but we're going to come back to this. Again, we're getting things kicked off here at day 2 of Bitcoin MENA 2025. We're headed to commercial break. We'll be right back here at the Bitcoin Magazine news desk after this. Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine news desk powered by Crypto.com. We're here kicking things off at Bitcoin MENA 2025, day 2. I'm Frank Corva, Bitcoin journalist, joined to my left by Shawn, Owen, founder and CEO of Salt Lending, as well as Stafford Masie, executive chairman of the Africa Bitcoin Corporation. Gentlemen, we were just talking about outlook for 2026. Shawn, I'll come over to you first, and then maybe outlook for 2026 and what you're looking forward to today here at the conference.
2026, I think, is very exciting. We had, obviously, an interesting year, 2025. It was also exciting, but it has been, I think, this war around if the cycles are still in existence or not. And I think it's definitely got quite a bit to rebound. There's a ton of companies that are just now getting to the point where they can really do what they set out to do in 2026. There's so much innovation happening around digital credit, digital insurance, a lot of ways of rethinking banking and lending. that these core pillars of what have to continue to grow are continuing to grow. And I think that's very exciting. You see jurisdictions, like I've heard from many people that have been at this conference and the one from last year, that have mentioned that there's so much more adoption and sense of interest from the companies that have all grown over the last year. And in jurisdictions like this that are very much looking to become a new hub of this, that it's happening. It's 2 solid weeks of just nothing but people. And I think we're at the end of the year. It's going to be a really, I think, exciting year next year.
Okay, we're ramping into 2026. I like that. We talked a little bit about 2026, but today I know you're a fan of Michael Saylor. You said what he's done has transcended gravity at this point.
Yeah,
I think that's the way you put it. Are you looking forward to his keynote this evening?
Absolutely. And I think for us in 2026, we're very excited because I think it's where we'll demonstrate what Bitcoin means for humanity in Africa. We're very, very excited. I mean, as a company that does private credit now galvanized with Bitcoin, if you take a look at our pipeline of opportunities, we're in a continent where the average age is 19.3.
Is that right? Across Africa?
Across Africa, 19. But we're the youngest continent in the world. 60% of the population is below the age of 23. And these folks are gaining access to AI. They're not just getting connected to the internet. And what a farmer in Africa can do when he picks up his soil and points Claude at it and says, hey, what can I do with the soil? Or he takes a look at his animals that have a particular disease and he takes that out and says, hey, how do I resolve this problem? Or give me an idea on what I can do with my land,
Is this happening now?
That is happening in Africa today. And that's the huge unlock for AI. And people are not talking about this. So artificial cognitions meeting latent human potential at that age group in Africa with the resources that we have, I think 2026 is going to be finally when Africa demonstrates its rising. We've always talked about Africa rising. Even I, as an African, am fatigued by that. But I think if you take a look at artificial cognitions, AI, you take a look at perfect money, Bitcoin, and private credit, spinning that up, I'm very excited about 2026. And I think you're going to see examples that are tectonic, and I think we're going to demonstrate to the world the original emancipation of Bitcoin. This is like what this thing is not about money go up. It's not about financial instrumentation only. I'm a huge fan of Saylor. What he's done is extraordinary. But what we want to do is have the human yield impact. As much as he's having the digital credit impact, we want to kind of do something that on a Pan-African basis unlocks something where we see real human problems being solved on our continent. And I think we've got all the assets. I mean, we've got all the rivers, we've got all the minerals, we've got all the rare earths, we've got all the human talent combined in a smoothie with everything I've just described. We're very excited for 2026, and I'm very excited for Bitcoin.
Appreciate that. Does Bitcoin, by default, become the money of AI? You brought it up, so I wanted to touch on this. I know everybody here, a lot of us tend to think that will happen, kind of, but I think there will be, I don't like to be too antagonistic, but maybe some shitcoin companies out there that try to push some other tokens as the currency. Is it inevitable that it ends up becoming Bitcoin? I'll go to you first, Shawn.
Absolutely, yes. And that doesn't mean it would be exclusively Bitcoin, but I do think that Bitcoin makes an excellent pairing of the opposite side of AI, where much of what you need is just sourcing, facting, and citing truth. And Bitcoin is the truth machine. And so I think there's so much potential that doesn't really get talked about that much, because it's almost like it sounds too buzzwordy. Right? It sounds too buzzwordy. But I do think that is obvious, that a digital intelligence and a digital currency would go together, digital money. And there's already evidence of that.
Appreciate that. Stafford, we're cutting back to the main stage in about 30 seconds, so maybe just a yes or no. Is Bitcoin by default, does that become the money of AI?
I don't know. I think we're going to have this technological integration trying to happen, but I think we need to stay at an 80,000 foot level. I think AI unlocks economic energy. Let's take the Saylor route. AI unlocks economic energy. I think Bitcoin stores that energy and allows you to carry that energy around. That's real in Africa. If I can generate economic energy down there in my rural village, in my soil, with my animals, with my minerals, with my culture, where do I store that energy? And can I convey that energy? And can I transport that energy? At a base level, 80,000 foot, that's the relationship between Bitcoin and AI. One generates economic energy, the other one is its battery, and I'm stealing that from Mark Moss.
He
said,
shout out to Mark. We usually have him on, so we appreciate you channeling some Mark Moss for us.
But Bitcoin is the battery for AI's energy.
We love that.